Hello. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to spend with me and learn the 6 steps that you can take to a high-performing website without contractors, without a redesign. I want to make the most of our time together, so let's dive right in. Did you know that 88% of people are less inclined to return to a website after a bad user experience, even if they like your product or service? Or that 13% of customers will tell 15 or more people about bad experiences? 13%, that's huge. Of 100 people, that makes a total of 195 people who are going to learn about a bad experience. But the good news is that for every $1 you invest in improving the user experience of your website, you'll get a return of between $2 and $50. Even if it at its lowest, that's double your investment. I'll take those numbers any day. There's one small business that I worked with, Passive Design Solutions. They're an architectural design firm. They grew their website leads from fewer than 5 per month to 75 this past March. And the feedback they get on their updated website is excellent. 5 leads to 75, that's 15 times improvement. Talk about high performance, and they didn't redesign their website. Together, we carried out the 6 steps that I'm going to share with you today. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's great, Stephanie, but I don't design homes. I don't sell a product online. Maybe you're wondering if this 6-step process is right for you. I can assure you it is. I've worked with organizations ranging from manufacturers to home care services, clothing retailers, hearing clinics, lots of different kinds of companies over the last 16 years, and they've all benefited. This methodology works across the board because it's based on your customers. That's the foundation, and all of the steps build on it. Let me share a bit about my background. I started working just at the birth of the World Wide Web back in 1994. I started working in web, doing inside sales for an internet service provider. And as part of that role, I got to sit in a shopping mall and give passing shoppers demos of this cool new thing called the World Wide Web. And I really, became fascinated with how people learned how to use it. From there, I went on to become an e-marketing manager for an email services company, learning the ins and outs of things like search engine optimization and paid marketing, email marketing, all those kinds of things. After that, I went to work for a search engine as their product manager. And then following that, I went on to become the user experience lead for a digital agency where I spent 13 years. And then for the last 4 years, I've been an independent user experience strategist and trainer. During all these years, I've seen the web evolve from the introduction of web-based email to high-speed internet in the home, smartphones. It's all changed so rapidly. But you know what doesn't change? Your customers. The psychology of how they buy. I've conducted hundreds of usability tests over the years and observed how people behave. The web keeps putting up obstacles in their way. More powerful CMS, new devices, rapid change. These things give organizations way more ways to get in the way of their audience's desire to do business with them. And as a result, website users need an advocate. So I fight the good fight. And the thing is that doing what's right for the user is also beneficial for the organization. And it's what creates that high-performing website. So this session is for you if maybe you've noticed that you're not getting the same number of leads or conversions that you used to. Perhaps you're hearing complaints about people not being able to find what they need on your site. Or you want to bring more of your website care in-house so you're less dependent on outside folks. Or plain and simple, you just want to make more money from your website. I'm here to tell you it can be better. This is really important to your business. So listen on to the end. There's lots of different reasons that we're going to talk about today. So stick with me. I'm going to reveal all the ways that your site might be losing money and then how to turn that around. So your audience can't find what they want. Your audience isn't converting. You want your audience to do more, buy more, be more. Central to this is the audience, the user. At its core, the 6 steps that I'm going to share are about user experience. It's a term that's been pretty badly overused in the industry, so I want to set out a definition so we're all on the same page. User experience is about how someone feels about every interaction that they have with what's in front of them at the moment they're using it. The first requirement for a satisfying user experience is just to meet the needs of the customer without fuss or bother. Just the basics. Usable, reliable, intuitive. Don't make them think too hard about what they have to do next. So whenever there's any hesitation or frustration or confusion on the part of a potential customer, the user experience becomes less satisfying. I know you've all had these experiences yourself. You're on a site and you can't find what you're looking for, or you think you're in the right place and you click a link and then you're completely lost. Or maybe you've tried to buy something and you click that buy button and nothing happens. Did your payment go through? Should you click it again? What if you get charged twice? Right? All of these things make your potential customers question your credibility. You could be the best in your industry, but if the website experience is poor, those feelings will translate directly to your brand. So you can pour all the money you want into advertising to get people to your website, but if the user experience isn't good, it's a leaky bucket. It can be difficult to quantify, but make no mistake, the losses to your business are real. If your site is not aligned with how your customers want to engage and buy from you, they won't understand what you do or if you can help them. They can't easily find or understand answers to their questions. They won't trust you. They will be hitting the back button to your competitor. If you're unsure what poor UX looks like, there are 3 quick tools I want to share with you. They test very different aspects of your site in terms of the user experience. The first one is Page Speed Insights. Just Google Page Speed Insights. This is a free service. You just copy and paste your URL in, and it's going to measure the speed of your site. I'm picking on Trader Joe's for absolutely no reason. I picked them randomly. But you can see that their mobile user experience rates a 19 out of 100. Not great. And you can see you can also click right next to mobile. You can click to look at the desktop experience. The fact is, when customers come to your site, they are impatient. They have a task at hand. They want to get right to it. And if your page is slow, if it takes a few seconds to load for them to do what they want to do, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. Okay, so you're making your customers unhappy, and you're also making Google unhappy because Google ranks slow websites less well than those that are faster. Another tool that I love is called the Hemingway Editor. Just again, Google Hemingway Editor. From a user experience perspective, people don't like to read, right? We don't go to a website and read it top to bottom, left to right, like we do a book. We are skipping and skimming along the way. And because of that, if the reading is more difficult, the user experience is more difficult. So it's really recommended that you're writing at a junior high level, like grade 7 or 8. So this tool is wonderful because you can just paste in your content and it will tell you what the grade level is, and it will give you lots of hints and ideas about precisely where you can fix up your content to make it easier to read, thus creating a better user experience. The next is called the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. 1 in 5 people has a disability, right? That could be visual impairment, hearing impairment, cognitive, motor skills. So if your site isn't accessible, it's going to deliver a poor user experience. So with this tool, again, you just paste in your URL and it's going to evaluate. It does 1 page at a time, not your whole site, but it's going to evaluate a web page and identify all of the areas that could pose accessibility issues for people. So perhaps something isn't labeled well enough and it won't be recognized by a screen reader, or perhaps the color contrast between your text and your background is not enough, making it difficult to see that there are changes. So lots of great information to be found with this report, and it tells you exactly what needs to be fixed and where on your site. So it's a great tool. So my goal today is to talk about why the user experience is so important to your success and can't be neglected. Then I'm going to help you identify why the performance on your own site might be lacking so you can avoid it in the future, and then share with you these 6 steps that you can take to improve your site. This process is all about creating a better experience for your customers. When they succeed on your site, you will succeed in your business. I've been working with organizations on website designs for over 15 years, and I want to share with you a pattern that I've seen time and again. Maybe it will resonate with you. So a website launches, it starts fresh and clean, it was well researched and catered to the right audience, and it looked beautiful. It was crafted to convert visitors into buyers. And then what would I see happen? Well, after the launch, which is a really big ordeal and a relief to be done with, everyone on the team would move on to something else. In short, they launch and forget. So this is what happens. Nothing. On this site, nothing happened. And so that beautiful, finely crafted user experience deteriorates. Now, you might think that the experience would stay the same if you launched and did nothing, but absolutely not. Just like driving a new car off the lot, the user experience depreciates. Why is this? Well, for one, technology is changing. You built the site to look good on popular browsers and devices at the time. But there are always new browser versions, the latest iPhone, updates to your content management system just keep coming. And your customers are now using the latest and greatest. So things are starting to look a little bit different on your site. Do you remember when smartphones were first introduced and every website all of a sudden looked crappy? People certainly didn't plan for that when they developed their websites. And maybe your customer has changed too. Perhaps they're using your product or service differently and you don't know about it. And due to technology, or maybe the improved user experience they're having on other websites, their expectations for your site have increased. And when there are better alternatives, suddenly your site just doesn't look so good anymore. But you know what? The opposite is also true. The opposite of doing nothing. We give companies these very powerful content management tools so they have the ability to maintain their own sites. So the site launches, and suddenly everyone in the organization has claimed their little corner of the site, and it's a free-for-all. They're adding pages and editing content and adding images. They're creating sections and changing styles. It's ad hoc and reactive. And the problem that I saw repeated time and again is that left on their own, the decisions about what content to add or edit were no longer about what the audience needed. The website became just a place to put stuff. And over time, that website starts to look like your garage or your attic. It's a dumping ground because everybody likes to add and no one likes to take anything away. And so fast forward 3 years and people complain they can't find anything on your site. And some are even embarrassed to send their customers there. Does any of this sound familiar? The bottom line is that your website needs to keep pace with your audience's expectations and needs. Otherwise, the user experience is going to deteriorate and your website becomes an underperforming liability. But it doesn't have to be this way. Let's look at some of these underlying reasons, the root causes of mismanagement, so that you've got a chance of avoiding them in the future. So give me your attention here. These are the reasons why good websites go bad, and you may be guilty of some and not even realize it. The first is that you say yes when you should be saying no. Every request to add a piece of content to the homepage or a new section or feature, it gets added. And as a result, the site becomes bloated and disorganized. Often these content requests are ego-driven. The company won an award, or the CEO spoke at an event, or perhaps your competitor is doing something and you've just got to catch up. Internal agendas often don't have your audience's best interests at heart, and your website analytics reports will tell you people just don't read that kind of content. So the next time someone wants to add something, you need to ask, is this new content or functionality addressing or enhancing the needs of your audience? And if it isn't, you've got to say no. Simple as that. Less is more when it comes to your website. The second reason is that you didn't understand the commitment. Basically, you treat your website like a microwave, something you sit on a shelf and use daily, but you only really think about it when it doesn't work. In reality, your website is a puppy. It needs care and feeding and exercise, regular checkups and grooming. Seldom do clients allocate any resources or budget for the ongoing maintenance of their websites, for taking care of their puppy. And when it stops working, just like that microwave, you throw it out and buy a new one. Next is shiny object syndrome. This is the opposite of thinking you bought a microwave. The site changes too quickly because you're chasing the shiny object for the sake of trying to be on the cutting edge or to be perceived as ahead of the curve. Audiences often don't appreciate these revolutionary changes. They become familiar with where things are and what you call them. Basically, they've learned your site. Shiny object syndrome is also often ego-driven, trying to be something you're not. The next reason is that you try to be all things to all people. As the saying goes, when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. In this scenario, you try to address every little user request, giving them all the same priority. Your site loses focus. You lose sight of your goals and your audience. And as you try to make everyone happy, the message gets broader and blander and finally ineffective. The next reason is lack of governance. I mentioned earlier that a CMS is a powerful tool. It gives you the ability to make all of these changes without having to call the IT department or hire someone out. Well, that's a blessing and a curse. And to quote Spider-Man's Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. So what does lack of governance mean? Well, picture this. I had a client, a large organization with a 6,000 page website, and they had given over 300 people publishing rights to the content management system and no editorial oversight. So you can imagine the inconsistencies and the mess on the website. There needs to be defined roles and permissions and a workflow for your site. And, of course, someone who's willing to be in charge of the whole thing. The sixth reason is the anonymous user. And I hold some responsibility here along with this whole UX industry. And that's the word user. The very word dehumanizes our audience and they become this faceless, nameless entity, someone easy to forget. But if you don't have a thorough understanding of who your audience is and keep them front and center, you can forget them. You're bound to make choices not in their best interest because you don't know what the right choices are. Everyone in your company should know who you're trying to do business with and how and why they choose you. So there they are, 1 through 6. You say yes when you should say no. You don't understand the commitment. You suffer from shiny object syndrome. You try to be all things to all people. You lack governance. You don't know your users. Which ones are you guilty of? Well, let me tell you what we can do about it. These are the 6 steps to a high-performing website. Number 1, get clear on your goals. Number 2, know your customer. Number 3, identify all your content needs. 4, take stock of what you have now and reorganize. 5, add calls to action. And finally, measure. Of these steps, where do you think people stumble? What stops performance? Would you be surprised to hear that it's number 5, adding calls to action? Did you know that over 70% of small business websites do not use call to action buttons? 70%! This explains why your websites aren't performing well. If you want to make the sale, you need to ask for it. But, it's not just about asking for it. You need to ask the right action at the right time. And you can't do that without going through steps 1 to 4. So these are the 6 steps that you can take to align your content with your customer and increase conversion rates. as I said, without external contractors, without a redesign. Now, you might be thinking, how am I going to do this? I don't know how to code or design. I've got no technical skills. Well, you know what? Neither do I. Not a developer, not a designer. But let me share you a little story. In 2017, I left a web design agency after 13 years and became an independent UX consultant. So a lot of the projects that I do are user experience audits. I review a website in detail against, I have this 90-point checklist, and I give the website a grade, and the company gets a list of all the recommendations for improvement. After doing a number of these projects on my own, here's what I discovered. And this was a really big aha moment for me after years of working on website redesigns. What I discovered is that most of these issues with websites were content issues. The wrong message, badly formatted content, disorganized layouts, jargon that no one understood, confusing or irrelevant images, no calls to action, and the wrong priorities of content. It's a lot of different content issues. Let me just show you a few examples. Take a look at this site. In this example, everything is fighting for attention. There's too many colors, too many fonts and boxes. This site is screaming at you, and your eye doesn't know where to focus. This site is the exact opposite. It's pretty boring. There's nothing grabbing your attention. There's a lot of repetition. All of these elements have equal weighting. And again, your eyes just sort of floating around the screen, but not going anywhere it should. How about this one? It's pretty easy on the eyes compared to the last two. It's uncluttered, easy to focus and scan all of that content, but there is no call to action. This is a services page. They should be selling, right? You go through all of that content and then you're just left having to reevaluate all your choices. So lots of issues that can be updated or fixed in a content management system. It doesn't matter if you're using WordPress or Drupal, Squarespace, Wix. What it means is that these things don't require technical skills. You don't need to touch the code. So what I was finding on all these projects is that I could implement a lot of the recommendations that came out of my audits. I didn't need to reach out to a developer. And my clients didn't need to redesign their websites. And you won't have to either, right? So stay with me. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to avoid these messes. You might also be thinking, I don't have the time to do this, right? How am I going to carry out these 6 steps? I've got other stuff to do. Look, I get it. Managing your website is probably something you do off the side of your desk. If you're an entrepreneur like me, you are really focused on sales and clients, and, working on your own stuff is at the bottom of the pile. This methodology that I'm going to share with you, though, very shortly, it's a step-by-step process. These are the kinds of activities that you can chip away at. You can spend an hour or 2 at a time and see good progress, and maybe even engage others on your team to help you out. So if you were thinking that you had to do a redesign and you were going to commit to that, then you certainly have time to commit to this. Maybe you're thinking, I don't have the power to make these decisions. My boss dictates what happens on the site. Well, this can be a challenge. If this is the case, it might be contributing to why you're in this situation at all. But the fact is, your users, your customers, need an advocate. So here's how you can build a business case. Show them the performance in analytics. Share feedback and complaints from website visitors who haven't been able to do what they want on the site. Remind them of the cost of a redesign every few years, and that with these 6 steps you can avoid that and still improve conversions. That's a win-win. So let's take a closer look at these 6 steps. These are steps that I've refined in my practice over the past 20 years. These steps, if you take them, will increase the performance of your website. Maybe you've already done some of these activities recently as part of a redesign, but somewhere along the way your website lost its focus from that bright, shiny site it was on launch day to a state that it is now that led you to this webinar in the first place. So we're going to look at each one of these briefly so you've got a better understanding of what's required. And by all means, if you have some of these, done from your last redesign process, then dust them off and reuse what you can, but don't skip any steps. And then in a few minutes, I'll explain how you can get some in-depth help with these 6 steps. Number 1, get clear on your goals. This is a small but important step. It sets the direction and tone for the rest of your work. When I say goals, I'm not talking about your website goals. You need to be clear on the organizational goals you're trying to achieve. Do you want to increase sales in a specific region? Do you want to grow market share for a product? Are you trying to hire a certain number of employees? Get specific. And then the goal of your website is then to help you reach your organizational goals. Everything flows from the top. So if you want to increase sales, the site needs to facilitate that. So step 1, writing down your organizational goals. Number 2, know your customer. The next step is really to create a profile of your customer. The performance of your site rests on delivering this great user experience, as we've been talking about. And you can't do that without understanding the user. From the moment they realize a need or a problem that your organization could solve, all along their decision-making process. Here's a sampling of questions that you should be able to answer about your customer. Why does their need exist, right? Why do they have this need for a product or service like yours? And what worries them about it? What do they see and hear about this from friends, family, colleagues in the marketplace, influencers on social media? And then how do they talk about this need, right? Are they complaining loudly? Are they passive aggressive on social media? Or are they just quiet to hide it inside? Is it impacting their behavior? And what's their biggest fear relating to the need, right? What keeps them up at night? Some more questions. What is their ultimate goal, right? Describe what success looks like resolving this issue. How do they begin to address the need? What are the specific actions that they take, right? Are they talking to friends and family? Are they Googling something? Are they trying to pick up the phone? What's their process? And then what are their decision-making criteria, right? Once they've found some potential solutions for their problem, what are the must-have criteria versus the nice-to-haves? And then when they decide on a solution or a product or service that can help them, how do they actually take action? By fleshing out these details and understanding all their questions and concerns from the moment they realize a need for a product or service to when they decide that you are the organization to help them. In terms of collecting answers to these questions, you probably know some of them, but if not, your customer, potential customers, or even past or lost customers are your best source. Internally, talk to people who are on the front lines having conversations with customers every day, your sales folks, reception, support. The idea is you want to get as accurate information as possible. So talk to your customers, talk to the front lines, and fill in the blanks. The third step is to identify all the content needs. You definitely can't complete this step until you've completed number 2. If you think about all the information that you gathered about your customer in number 2, every question that they have during their decision-making process, it needs an answer. Every answer is a piece of content that you need to provide. So in this step, you need to comb through those customer profiles that you just created in step 2 and make a list of those answers. For example, if your customer wants to know how much it costs, then you provide pricing information. If they're concerned about the fit not being quite right, provide a sizing chart. Maybe you provide information on your return policy to give them some peace of mind. If they want to figure out how to fix their lawnmower, their rash, their relationship with their neighbor, then you're providing a DIY guide to diagnosing and fixing whatever that issue is. If they want to know if you have experience with companies like theirs, then show them with case studies and testimonials. You get the idea. They have a question. What is the content that you will provide that will answer it and give them confidence in your ability? The fourth step is to take stock of what you have now. So after you have a list of everything that you need on your site, the next step is to figure out what you have now and do a gap analysis. The easiest way to do this is in a spreadsheet. Your content management system is probably the best place to get it from because it's essentially your sitemap. So log into your CMS and go to a listing of all of your pages. You can export or copy the pages into a spreadsheet so that you've got one page per row. Try and maintain the order in the hierarchy that matches your navigation menus. Once you have that, you want to compare your spreadsheet to the list of content needs that you created in step 3 and answer the following. What content is missing from your current website? What content is on your site that isn't addressing a customer need? Right at the end of this, you may decide you have lots of excess pages. And if you do, can you get rid of stuff? This is a time to be ruthless. This site is for your customer. It's not for you. And the user experience may have deteriorated because ego crept in and allowed all kinds of content to be added that isn't serving your audience needs. So be ruthless, get rid of it. After doing the gap analysis, you're left with a complete list of the content that should be on your site. So you'll need to update your sitemap to incorporate the missing pages and remove the unnecessary ones. Remember, your sitemap is comprised of logical groups of pages based on how your customer thinks about your product or service. Where would they look for a particular piece of content and what do they call it? Using the language of your customer is also very important for your sitemap and navigation. Up until now, all this work has been happening on paper and spreadsheets, but now we're ready to start making updates in your content management system. So this will involve writing content and creating pages for the gaps that you uncovered, deleting or unpublishing old content, rearranging your navigation menus based on the sitemap updates that you made, and then adding calls to action. Which brings us to step 5. Your updates are not complete without calls to action. These are simply hyperlinks in the form of a text link or a button that encourage your customers along the decision-making journey. As we saw earlier, this is the area where most websites fall flat. Over 70% of business websites, small business websites, do not use call to action buttons. When you don't have a call to action, your customer's at a dead end. Your website is not like a book. They're not there to view pages in a set sequence. And the call to action tells your customer where they should go next to continue the story. Kind of like a choose your own adventure book. I don't know if you remember these from youth, but you'd read the story and at the bottom of the page it would say, if you want to chase the bad guy, turn to page 56. If you want to wimp out and go home, turn to page 78. It was feeding you these different options for where to go next. So every page of your site should have at least one main call to action. So ask yourself, if your customer has just read this particular information about my organization or my offerings, what is the next logical information that they need next to get them closer to being a customer? And hint, it isn't always buy now. Don't ask for too much too soon. Maybe the call to action is to learn about your process or compare features or to read a case study, right? But the important thing is to have those calls to action in context. Otherwise, your customer has to review all of your navigation menu options and choose where to go. They may choose the back button because you've just given them a big decision to make. Don't miss out on an opportunity to maintain their engagement and persuade them along the journey. The last in our 6 steps is to measure. The ability to track everything is one of the great benefits of the web. You can see how people are behaving and then make changes to improve performance. With the belief that we all have now that your website is a puppy and not a microwave, you know that your site is never finished. So getting into this cycle of measuring, analyzing the behaviors, and then acting on those insights to make positive changes in your site. This is how you keep your website performing well. Keep a healthy puppy. You will not have to replace your website every 3 years because it's healthy and maintained. In step 1, you defined your goals. So let's look back at those. What are the key performance indicators on your site that show progress toward those organizational goals? And finally, what are the metrics that indicate how you're doing? For example, if your goal is to increase sales of a specific product, then the key performance indicator is online purchases. And the metric is how many people clicked that buy now button, right? You can see the sequence. The most important metrics are usually those ultimate calls to actions that you determined in step 5. Register for an event, book a tour, apply now, sign up for the newsletter. These are these interactions that we want to measure because they signal a level of engagement from your user. So you get the idea. So to finish off, you need to identify the metrics that matter. Then make sure that they're being tracked in your analytics tool. You are using analytics tool, aren't you? This is an area where you may actually need to talk to your IT folks. If you discover that something is not being tracked out of the box by your analytics tool, then you may need to add some additional code to make sure that tracking is set up properly. If you don't have a lot of confidence in your analytics skills, there's a lot of great resources. If you just do a Google search for Google Analytics Academy or Google Analytics official blog, or even just how do I do blank in Google Analytics, there are tons of free resources in the form of webinars like this, YouTube videos, blog posts, etc. So those are our 6 steps in creating a high-performing website. Remember, for the most part, these are content updates, things that you can do in your content management system without touching code, without altering designs. This work is a process, and you can do it a little bit at a time, right? You don't need to carve out like 5 solid work days. You can complete this in little chunks over time and see great progress. And when you're finished, you'll have some measurable results, because when you align your content with your customers, with how your customers want to do business with you, it creates confidence and trust. And as a result, you will decrease reliance on external contractors and your IT team. You will increase your web savvy and gain confidence in your website decisions. You'll probably see a reduction in support calls and emails from customers because it's going to be easier for them to get the answers on your website. You will attract a more qualified audience to your site and convert them at a higher rate, which leads to, most importantly, more sales, more leads, more registrations, donations, etc., whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Let's talk about the downside of not fixing, of doing nothing. It's hard to quantify the cost of people hitting the back button to go to a competitor. Your brand, your reputation, is tarnished when people have a poor user experience on your website. As we heard earlier, 13% of customers will tell 15 or more people about a bad experience. And unfortunately, the longer you wait, the more likely it is that you'll need to do a full redesign because technology and expectations will have left you behind. And a redesign is going to cost way more than dedicating some of your time to these 6 steps. The best part, you can start this process right away. There's no barrier. You can go it alone, or I can guide you through it. I want to introduce Clear Paths for Customers, 6 steps to a high-performing website. I've packaged up all of these 6 steps into a self-guided program. So let me tell you what it's all about. But before we get through it, I want to say that this solution isn't for everyone. I can't responsibly recommend it to everybody. So let me tell you who it's for and who it's not. It's not for someone who wants to wave a magic wand and have everything fixed. This is a process. So if you're someone who buys something like this, a course, a program, and sits back, this is probably not for you. You'll be disappointed by your results. As well, if you are with a large organization with many stakeholders and every little decision needs to go through a committee, this may not be optimal. So if this is you, maybe reach out to me and we can talk through the best way to handle that. If you don't fall into one of those camps, then tune in to the end. Here's what the program consists of. There are 6 short video lessons, one for each of the steps I just walked through. And to help you along the way with each of the activities, I provide 9 worksheets, 5 sample templates, and 4 best practice guides. Here's what we'll cover in each of the 6 modules. The first module is what is user experience? I'll walk through the importance of your website in establishing trust with your audience. I'll introduce the concept called the UX honeycomb, which you can use to assess the quality of the user experience on your site. We'll define your goals, complete a success profile worksheet, and once we understand user experience, we can dig into the most important part of it all, the user. This is Module 2, Charting Your Customer's Journey. I'll break down the decision-making process of your customers, how and why they choose products or services like yours. You'll create an empathy map for your customer, as well as a customer journey map. And I'll share a process for collecting customer insights. Next, in step 3 is mapping your content. Building off of step 2, I'll walk through the process to identify all of the content that's necessary to address your customers' needs at each step of their decision making. You'll create something called a content map. It's a really helpful tool to organize content needs and related messaging. And you'll learn how to do keyword research. I share a really handy guide. Module 4 is taking stock of your current site. Once we know what content your audience needs, you can evaluate what you already have. I'll share a customized spreadsheet that will help you complete an inventory of what you have now. You'll do a gap analysis to see what's missing and what's in excess so that you can move forward with the right content. And we'll learn best practices for organizing your pages and then update your sitemap. With a full organized view of all your site content, we move into Module 5, which is crafting the journey architecture. I'll show you how to identify clear paths through your content from the start of their journey to conversion. I'll share techniques for writing and placing effective calls to action. And you'll receive a site updates checklist for making changes to your site. Then we come full circle. Step number 6, measuring your success. I'll guide you through how to identify what behaviors on your site indicate it's performing well. You'll create a measurement framework, which is a way to document your key performance indicators and metrics. You'll configure your site to track what's important, and I'll guide you through setting up performance tracking. So this is everything that's included. We've got the 6 modules, each with a video lesson, 9 worksheets, 5 sample templates, 4 best practice guides and checklists, a total of 18 tools to help guide you through. This is the exact same methodology that I do for my clients and with them in in-person workshops. The short videos are really me as your guide, as if I was in the room with you. I'll explain the concepts and why they're important, and I'll introduce each of the tools that are relevant to that step so that you know how to complete them. So I know you're all thinking, this sounds great, but what's the cost? This program is priced at $189. And to top it off, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So the only risk is that you do nothing, and the user experience on your site continues to languish. Plus, consider all the money you're not spending on another redesign. So there you go. This is a great deal. There's a link right underneath the video. Go get it. Thank you.